The colony at the edge of the galaxy was silent under its artificial night. Tall towers of steel and glass shone faintly with the dim glow of security lamps. Inside the command hall, human Governor Marcus sat alone, staring at reports on his console. The numbers were wrong, the supply logs incomplete, yet every officer swore nothing was missing. He wanted to believe them. He wanted to trust the men and women who had built this colony with him. But something did not feel right. It was then that he heard a voice, soft and trembling, like the wind in the empty corridors. "Someone is robbing you," the voice whispered. Marcus turned sharply, his hand brushing the sidearm at his belt. In the shadowed corner stood a young alien girl, her skin glowing faintly blue in the dim light, her large eyes fixed on him with both fear and urgency. She could not have been older than 16 in human years, small, fragile-looking, but there was something ancient in her gaze. Marcus frowned. "Who are you, and how did you get in here?" The girl stepped forward, her bare feet silent against the metal floor. "My name does not matter, but you must listen," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They are stealing from you, every day, from under your nose, and soon your whole colony will fall." Her words fell like cold iron into Marcus's chest. For a long moment he said nothing, his eyes searching her face for any sign of deceit. She did not blink, she did not flinch, only stared at him as though his life depended on her truth. Marcus felt a chill run through him, the kind of cold that no fire could push away. "Why should I believe you?" he asked slowly. "Because I have seen it. I know the tunnels they use, the deals they make, the lies they tell when they smile before you," she answered. Her hands shook as she spoke, but her words cut deep. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his mind racing. For months he had sensed it. Cargo runs that arrived lighter than expected, credits vanishing from accounts, ration complaints spreading among colonists. But every time he confronted his staff, they gave polished reports and forged data. He hated doubt, but now it stared him in the face in the form of a trembling alien child. "Why tell me this?" Marcus demanded, his voice rough. "Because if you wait longer, it will be too late," the alien girl said. "They will take everything, and when the colony falls, they will blame you, the human governor, and you will die as a traitor to your own people." Her words struck him like a blade, for he knew it was possible. He studied her again, the strange markings across her forehead glowing faintly as though alive. She was not from any known race he had studied, not one of the regular settlers or workers. Her presence itself was a mystery, and yet her fear seemed real. Marcus rose from his seat, his towering frame casting a shadow over her small body. "If you are lying to me, I will end you myself," he said coldly. The girl did not move, only nodded. "Then follow me, and see the truth with your own eyes." The air between them felt heavy, charged with tension. Marcus hesitated, torn between reason and instinct. But something in the girl's eyes, something raw and unbroken, pulled him forward. He picked up his coat, tightened his grip on his weapon, and signaled for the security doors to open. The night air of the colony rushed in, cool and metallic. The alien girl walked ahead, her glow a faint beacon in the darkness. Marcus followed, his mind burning with suspicion and anger. Every step echoed like the heartbeat of the colony itself. And so it began, a human governor walking into the shadows behind a fragile alien whisper, not knowing that by dawn, nothing in his world would ever be the same again. The alien girl led Marcus through the sleeping colony, her faint glow bouncing against the cold metal walls. The corridors were empty, filled only with the distant hum of the life support systems and the quiet buzz of old lights. She walked quickly, barefoot, never looking back, and Marcus followed with careful steps, his eyes moving across every corner, every shadow, searching for danger. He wanted to doubt her, to dismiss her as a frightened child spinning tales, yet each moment stretched his unease, making his suspicions heavier. The colony had always been a place of order, built by human hands and powered by trust. Marcus had believed in his staff, men and women who had sworn loyalty when the first structures were raised from the barren ground. But cracks had formed, and he had ignored them, telling himself that every shortage had an explanation, every missing cargo a delay, every anxious colonist only imagining problems. Now the girl's words replayed in his mind. "They are stealing from you," echoing louder with every step he took into the dark. They entered the old storage wing, a sector abandoned after new warehouses had been built. Dust clung to the walls, and silence filled the air like a waiting predator. The girl stopped before a sealed door, one Marcus knew had not been opened in months. She placed her small hand against the panel, and to his shock the lock disengaged with a hiss. Inside, the room was not empty, not abandoned, but alive with hidden trade. Stacks of supplies, fuel cells, medicine crates, even weapons, were piled in the corners, covered with tarps to keep scanners blind. Marcus felt his throat tighten, the sight striking him like a blow. "Do you see?" the girl whispered, her voice trembling. "This is only one of the places they use." Marcus stepped forward, brushing his hand over a crate marked with his colony's insignia, a shipment he had signed off on weeks ago. Rage burned inside him, but he kept his face cold, his mind racing. If this was true, then the theft had gone deeper than simple greed. It meant betrayal from those closest to him. His officers, his advisors, maybe even the people he shared meals with. He clenched his fists, the weight of leadership pressing against his chest like a chain. "How do you know all this?" he asked, his voice hard. The alien girl lowered her eyes, her glowing markings flickering faintly. "Because I lived in the shadows where they made their deals," she said. "They never saw me, they never cared, but I listened, I watched, I followed them when no one else dared." Her words carried no pride, only the heavy tone of someone who had seen too much. Marcus studied her again, wondering what kind of life had forged a child into a spy. But the evidence before his eyes spoke louder than any doubt. He opened one of the crates, revealing weapons packed in soft foam, rifles and pistols designed for war, not for a colony meant to survive in peace. Each weapon carried the seal of Earth's armory, stolen, redirected, or bought through corruption. The realization twisted his gut, for if his staff could hide weapons, then they were preparing for more than profit. They were planning rebellion, perhaps even war. Marcus forced himself to stay calm, though his voice shook with cold fury. "Names, I need names," he demanded. The girl hesitated, her eyes flickering with fear, then she whispered, "The men you trust most, the ones closest to you." The words cut deeper than any blade. Marcus thought of Commander Hale, his security chief who had protected the colony since the first day. He thought of Treasurer Lin, who had always balanced accounts with sharp precision. He thought of Dr. Karras, the medical head who had cared for settlers like her own family. The idea of betrayal from them burned inside him. But the stolen crates were proof enough that betrayal was no longer a possibility. It was fact. His chest rose and fell with slow, heavy breaths. The girl watched him silently, waiting for the explosion she knew was coming. Marcus turned away from the crates, his boots heavy on the floor. His mind was no longer filled with doubt, but with decisions, cold and dangerous decisions. He would not act yet, not until he had caught them all in the act. He would let the trap close on their necks, and when the time came, no mercy would be given. The colony would see the truth, and his judgment would strike like lightning. The girl walked beside him, quiet, her glow casting faint shadows against the crates of stolen life. Marcus's jaw tightened as he whispered to himself, "They thought I was blind, but I will show them what it means to betray a human." As they left the hidden chamber, the heavy door sealing behind them with a hiss, Marcus's resolve hardened. The colony slept, unaware that by dawn their world would be torn apart. The alien girl stayed at his side, her whisper still echoing in his mind. Not just a warning, but a spark that had lit the fire of his wrath. And that fire would burn until every thief was ashes beneath his feet. Marcus did not sleep that night. He sat in his command hall, the alien girl silent in the corner, her glowing skin faint in the shadows. Reports and files floated across his console, numbers shifting like ghosts, hiding lies in plain sight. For years he had trusted his people. For years he had believed in loyalty. But now every name, every report, every smile looked like a mask. The girl spoke at last, her voice low. "If you want to see their crimes, you cannot look in your reports. They have written the lies themselves. You must walk where they walk, see what they hide." Marcus nodded slowly, his jaw set. He was a soldier before he was a governor, and soldiers did not wait for proof to arrive in neat files. They hunted truth in the field. And so he rose, strapping his weapon to his side, and together they moved back into the dark veins of the colony. The girl led him through maintenance shafts that smelled of oil and rust, through vents that carried the voices of men who thought they were alone. He crouched in silence, listening, his heart steady as he heard words that confirmed everything. Shipment moved last night. Lynn covered the credits. Hale secured the gate. The voices laughed, careless, never knowing their governor knelt above them with rage growing like a storm. They crawled deeper until they reached another sealed chamber. The girl placed her hand on the scanner again. The light flared, and the door slid open with a whisper of steel. Inside was no storage room, but a meeting place. Tables covered in maps, documents, and strange devices, some human, some alien. Symbols Marcus did not recognize burned faintly across the walls, carved in secret. His eyes narrowed, for this was no simple theft. This was conspiracy, deep and venomous. The girl pointed to the table, her hand trembling. They trade with outsiders, raiders, mercenaries, not just for profit but for power. They want the colony for themselves. They want to tear your command away from you. Marcus walked forward, his fingers brushing the stolen maps. Routes of supply lines, hidden exits in the colony walls, codes for communications. All of it stolen, copied, ready to be used against him. He lifted one sheet, his face tightening as he read a list of names. Not just his staff, but workers, guards, even farmers, people he had broken bread with. The betrayal spread like rot through the colony's roots. His chest felt heavy, but he forced his voice steady. Why are you helping me? Alien child, this is not your fight. The girl looked at him, her large eyes glowing with sorrow. Because I saw what happened to my own people when we trusted leaders like them, she whispered. They came with promises, they smiled. Then they stole until nothing was left. My family died in silence. I will not watch it happen again. Her words carried a pain that Marcus did not need to question. It was written in the trembling of her hands, in the cracks of her voice. He studied her for a moment, then turned back to the table. The maps and files would be evidence, but evidence alone was not enough. He needed a plan, a strike that would crush the conspiracy in one blow. But timing was everything. Too early, and he would miss some. Too late, and they would strike first. He memorized the faces, the names, burning them into his mind like brands. Every traitor would fall, every thief would pay. They returned to the command hall before dawn. Marcus sealed the files in his private chamber, unseen by any other eyes. He poured water into a glass, his reflection staring back at him like a stranger. The alien girl sat quietly, her eyes never leaving him. You are angry, she said softly. I am ready, Marcus corrected, his voice cold. Ready to end this. Ready to remind them why humanity survives when others fall. As the artificial sun began to rise over the colony, Marcus sent routine orders. Nothing to reveal his knowledge, nothing to show his hand. He smiled when he greeted his officers, the same smile they had given him while hiding their betrayal. But behind that smile, his mind was a blade sharpening. He knew now that trust was a weakness, and mercy was a luxury he could no longer afford. The alien girl's whisper had opened his eyes, but his own wrath would deliver the judgment. And when the time came, the colony would learn that a human's response to betrayal was not sorrow. It was fire. The colony's artificial sun rose bright, spilling pale light over the steel streets. Workers moved through their routines, unaware that their governor carried the weight of a storm inside him. Marcus walked among them with calm steps, his expression unreadable, his voice steady. He greeted his people, gave orders, signed reports, everything as usual, yet beneath the calm mask, his mind sharpened with fury. The alien girl followed him at a distance, her glowing skin hidden beneath a hood. She was silent, watching, always near, like a shadow no one else noticed. Her whisper from the night still burned in Marcus's ears, a constant reminder of betrayal. Every smile he received that morning looked hollow, every nod felt false. The names on the stolen documents played in his head, faces of those he had trusted now painted as traitors. By noon, he sent a message to his council, summoning them to the main hall. The council chamber was vast, built of polished stone and reinforced steel, a symbol of unity. Today, it would become a place of judgment. One by one they entered, familiar voices filling the room with greetings, laughter, and false warmth. Commander Hale stood tall, his uniform perfect, his salute sharp. Treasurer Lin carried his data pads, his eyes calm and calculating. Dr. Karras smiled kindly as always, her hands folded neatly. Others followed, officers, advisors, leaders of the colony, all sitting at the long table, unaware of what awaited them. Marcus remained at the head of the table, his hands gripping the arms of his chair. He let them speak first, their reports flowing with lies and polished numbers. He nodded, pretended to listen, his expression cool and patient. But inside, every word was another spark on the fire already raging within him. When silence finally settled, Marcus rose slowly. His tall figure cast a shadow over the council, his eyes dark and heavy. "Do you know why I called you here?" he asked, his voice calm. Too calm. The room shifted, eyes glanced at each other. No one spoke. Marcus placed a file on the table, his fingers tapping the surface once. The alien girl stepped forward, pulling back her hood, her glow filling the chamber. Murmurs erupted, some frowned, some sneered, but Marcus silenced them with a raised hand. "She came to me with a warning," Marcus said, his tone low and cold. "She told me you are robbing this colony, stealing from your own people, betraying the trust one gave you." Laughter broke from one side of the table, nervous, forced. "Governor, you cannot be serious," Treasurer Lin said smoothly. "This child is deceiving you. She knows nothing of our work." Marcus's gaze did not move. His hand slid the file across the table. Inside were copies of the stolen maps, lists, shipments, and codes. The color drained from more than one face. Commander Hale shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Karras's smile faltered. Marcus's voice rose, hard and unshakable. "I walked through the tunnels myself. I saw the crates you hid. I heard your voices planning the theft. Your lies end today." The chamber fell into tense silence, broken only by the faint hum of the colony's systems. Eyes flicked nervously, sweat beaded on brows, hearts raced. Some tried to speak, but Marcus's glare silenced them. "You thought I was blind," Marcus continued, his words sharp as blades. "You thought humanity's trust was weakness, but you forgot what humanity becomes when betrayed. We do not forgive. We do not forget. We burn treachery until nothing remains." His hand slammed against the table, the sound echoing through the chamber like thunder. Several council members flinched, their masks crumbling, guilt written on their faces. The alien girl's voice cut through the silence, soft but merciless. "I told you. They are robbing you. Now they will rob no more." Her glow brightened, casting long shadows across the council. She looked at the traitors not with fear, but with the cold certainty of truth. Commander Hale finally spoke, his voice tight. "Governor, you cannot do this. You need us. The colony needs us." Marcus turned to him slowly, his eyes cold. "The colony needs loyalty, not thieves," he said. And with a wave of his hand, armed guards entered the chamber, weapons raised. Gasps filled the air, chairs scraped back, but no one dared move. One by one, Marcus pointed them out, his voice steady. "You are dismissed from service. You are stripped of power. You will face judgment for your betrayal." The traitors protested, shouted, begged, but their words bounced against his iron will. The guards moved swiftly, forcing them from their seats, chains locking around their wrists. Treasurer Lin cursed. Commander Hale glared. Dr. Karras wept silently. But Marcus did not flinch, did not waver, his heart hard as stone. The remaining loyal officers sat frozen, fear etched into their faces. They had witnessed the governor's wrath, and they would never forget. Marcus stood tall at the head of the chamber, his voice echoing as he declared, "This colony survives because of unity, and unity demands trust. You betrayed that trust, and so you are nothing. You are gone." The doors slammed shut as the traitors were dragged away. The silence left behind was heavy, broken only by the sound of Marcus's slow breathing. The alien girl looked at him, her eyes unreadable. "You chose the path of fire," she whispered. Marcus nodded once, his face grim. "It was the only path left," he answered. And though the chamber was cleared, though the traitors were taken, Marcus knew this was only the beginning. For betrayal never ends with one cut. It spreads, it lingers, it waits. And soon, the flames he had unleashed would burn brighter than he could imagine. The captured officers were dragged through the colony's corridors, their chains rattling against the steel floors. People gathered in silence, eyes wide as they watched leaders they had trusted being paraded as criminals. Whispers spread like fire, rumors growing with every step. The governor has turned on his own, some said. No, others answered, his own turned on him. The truth hung heavy in the air, sharp and dangerous. Marcus walked at the front, his boots echoing against the metal walls. His face was stone, his eyes unyielding, every line of his body carrying the weight of decision. He had no space left for doubt, no space left for mercy. The alien girl walked at his side, her glow hidden beneath her hood, but her presence strong. She said nothing, but Marcus could feel her eyes on him, measuring, judging, waiting. The prisoners were brought to the central square, a vast open place where the colony gathered for announcements. Screens lit up across the walls, showing every colonist the faces of those in chains. Children clung to parents, workers stood frozen, and silence stretched across the crowd like a blade. Marcus stood before them all, raising his voice so none could mistake his words. These men and women betrayed you, he declared, his voice cutting through the air. They stole your food, your medicine, your weapons. They sold our future for their greed. Gasps moved through the crowd, disbelief mixing with anger. He continued, his words sharp. They smiled at you. They swore loyalty, but behind closed doors they planned to rule for themselves, to sell you like cattle, to leave you to die. The traitors shouted back, their voices cracking with desperation. They lie, Governor. They trick you. This alien child deceived you. But Marcus's glare silenced them, his eyes burning with fury. I saw it with my own eyes, he growled. I walked their tunnels, touched their stolen crates, heard their plans whispered in the dark. His hand lifted, pointing at them like a judge's hammer. They thought I was blind, but I am human, and humans do not stay blind for long. The crowd erupted, voices rising in anger. Shouts of betrayal, cries for justice, the sound of fury breaking the silence. Colonists threw curses, some hurled stones. The chains rattled as the traitors flinched. Fear spread across their faces, their arrogance shattered. They had thought themselves untouchable, but now the people they had betrayed demanded their fall. Marcus raised his hand, and the crowd went silent again. His voice was cold as iron. For your crimes, you are no longer part of this colony. You are stripped of rank, of power, of name. From this day forward you are exiled beyond our walls. The traitors froze, their eyes wide. Exile was worse than prison, worse than death for many. Beyond the walls lay barren lands, storms of ice and sand, predators that stalked in the night. It was not punishment, it was a slow sentence, a promise of suffering. Commander Hale broke first, shouting with rage, "You cannot survive without us, Governor. You need our strength, our knowledge, our loyalty." Marcus stepped closer, his voice low but cutting. "Strength that betrayed me is weakness. Knowledge that sold my people is poison. Loyalty that breaks is nothing." His words struck harder than fists, and Hale fell silent, his shoulders heavy with defeat. Treasurer Lin tried another tactic, his tone smooth and pleading. "Governor, think of order, think of balance. If you do this, chaos will follow, the people will doubt you." Marcus turned to the crowd, lifting his hands. "Do you doubt me?" he asked. The people roared back as one. "No." Lin's face drained of color, and he lowered his eyes, broken. Dr. Karras wept quietly, her voice trembling. "I only wanted to protect them. I only wanted to care for my own." Marcus's gaze softened for a heartbeat, but then hardened again. "You cared only for yourself," he said, "and in doing so, you abandoned them all." Her tears fell, but no mercy followed. The guards moved, dragging the traitors toward the gates. Chains clanged against stone, cries echoed, but no one stepped forward to defend them. The colony watched in silence as the massive doors opened, the barren land stretching beyond, endless and merciless. One by one, the traitors were pushed outside, their shouts fading into the storm. The gates slammed shut with a final echo, sealing the judgment. Marcus stood tall, his eyes sweeping over his people. "You are safe," he declared, his voice firm. "No thief, no traitor will rule over you while I live. I will burn betrayal before it can touch you again." The crowd roared with approval, voices rising in unity, hands lifted high. The human governor stood like a pillar of iron, his wrath now legend. The alien girl stepped closer, her whisper soft, meant only for him. You have chosen fire, and fire will protect you, but it will also consume you if you are not careful. Marcus did not answer, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He had purged the rot, cleansed the colony with ruthless judgment. But deep inside, a shadow whispered that this was not the end. The storm had only begun. The colony slept uneasy that night. The traitors were gone, cast into the wastelands, but their shadows lingered over every mind. Families whispered in their homes, some relieved that justice had been done, others fearful of what would follow. Children asked questions their parents could not answer, and silence became the language of the colony. Marcus stood on the balcony of his command hall, the cold, artificial wind pressing against his face. The alien girl stood behind him, her hood drawn, her faint glow bleeding into the darkness. Below, the colony streets were quiet, too quiet, like the calm before a storm. Marcus's eyes were sharp, restless, for he knew betrayal never ended with exile. Those cast out would not simply die, they would plot, they would gather strength, and they would return. By dawn, his fears proved true. Reports streamed in from the outer patrols, sightings of movement beyond the walls, signals in the sand, trails of smoke rising where none should be. The exiles had not scattered, they had united, and worse, they had allies. Raiders from the wastelands, mercenaries who thrived in chaos, drawn by promises of stolen weapons and supplies. Marcus listened in silence as his officers spoke, his face hard, his hands gripping the edge of the table. The alien girl's voice cut through the noise, soft but steady. I told you, they are dangerous still, they will not forgive, they will come for you. Marcus dismissed the council and stood alone in the chamber. The weight of command pressed heavier than ever, but he did not bend. He had been a soldier once, forged in war, and now war had come again. If the traitors thought exile would make him weak, they had forgotten who he was. That evening, he walked through the colony streets, his people watching him with wary eyes. Some bowed their heads in respect, others looked away, afraid, uncertain. He did not blame them, for fear was natural. But he also knew that fear had to be turned into strength, or the colony would fall. So he spoke to them, his voice carried by the speakers across the settlement. You saw them dragged from among you, the thieves, the traitors, the ones who stole your bread and lied to your faces, he declared. They are gone, but they are not finished. They gather outside our walls. They bring raiders to strike at us. They wish to see us broken. The people listened, their eyes wide, their breath tight. Marcus's voice grew harder. But hear me now. Humans do not break. Humans do not bow. Humans fight until nothing is left standing against them. A murmur of courage spread through the crowd, the fire of his words catching in their hearts. The alien girl stood at his side, her whisper once again only for him. They fear you now, but they also trust you. Do not lose that balance, for if you rule by fear alone, you will become the same as those you cast out. Marcus met her eyes, his jaw tight. Fear is a tool, he answered, but I will wield it for survival, not for greed. She said nothing, but her silence carried both warning and acceptance. That night, Marcus prepared his defenses. Walls were reinforced, gates locked tighter, patrols doubled. Weapons were distributed to guards, training renewed, drills ordered. The colony was no longer just a settlement. It became a fortress, ready to face the storm outside. Yet Marcus knew walls alone could not win. To protect his people, he would have to strike first, to crush the threat before it grew into something unstoppable. In the war room, maps were spread across the table, red markers glowing where the exiles had been sighted. The alien girl leaned over the table, her finger pointing at one mark. They hide here, in the broken mining tunnels, she whispered. Marcus studied her, wondering again how she knew so much. Her knowledge was too sharp, too precise, as though she had walked those paths herself. But he said nothing, for now her guidance served him, and the truth of her past could wait. When his officers asked what must be done, Marcus answered without hesitation. We do not wait for them to strike, we bring the fire to their door. His words silenced the room, shock flickering in their eyes. But none dared question, not after what they had witnessed in the council chamber. The orders were clear, and they would be obeyed. As the night stretched on, Marcus stood once more on his balcony. The colony lights shimmered below, faint stars above, and in the distance, unseen, his enemies gathered. The alien girl stepped beside him, her whisper steady. "The choice you made today has changed you." Marcus looked at her, his face carved in shadow. "I was always this man," he said. "They only forced me to show it." The wind carried silence across the colony, a silence heavy with fear, with resolve, with destiny. The traitors had been exiled, but their war had just begun. And Marcus, the human governor, stood ready to meet it with ruthless fire. The wasteland storm raged against the colony walls, winds carrying sand like knives. Beyond those walls, the exiles gathered with their raider allies, a swarm of shadows lit by fire and steel. Their weapons glowed in the dark. Their voices rose with hunger for vengeance. They had lost their power inside the colony, but outside, they promised to return tenfold. Marcus stood in the war room, his officers tense, his people silent. The alien girl remained at his side, her glow faint but steady, her eyes fixed on him. The time for waiting was over, the time for hesitation long gone. Now was the moment that would decide whether the colony stood or burned. At dawn, the alarm sirens wailed, the raiders advanced, the exiles at their front. The colony shook with the thunder of weapons, the air cracked with fire. Marcus led his soldiers to the gates, his voice rising above the chaos. "Hold the walls, protect your families, no traitor will set foot here again," he roared. The people answered with a cry, their fear melting into fury, their hands gripping rifles and tools alike. Every man and woman stood ready, for this was no longer just his fight, it was theirs. The gates opened, and Marcus led the charge. Blasts of energy and bursts of smoke lit the battlefield. The raiders screamed as they clashed with human steel. Marcus fought at the front, his blade cutting through the dust, his gun firing with relentless precision. Every strike carried his wrath, every shot his judgment. The alien girl moved like a shadow beside him, her small form slipping through enemies, her hands guiding, her whispers warning. Together they fought, human and alien, fire and whisper. The exiles screamed Marcus's name, their rage twisting their faces. Commander Hale charged at him, his once loyal soldier, now a predator in chains of hatred. Their blades clashed, sparks flying, each strike heavy with memory. "You cast me out to die," Hale snarled. "You chose treason," Marcus answered, his blade cutting through Hale's defense. With one final strike, Hale fell, his fury silenced in the dust. Treasurer Lynn tried to flee, but Marcus's people caught him, their voices rising in anger. Dr. Karras knelt in surrender, tears falling, but no one came to her side. The raiders saw their allies falling and broke, their courage fading into the storm. One by one, they scattered into the wasteland, leaving only silence behind. The battlefield lay covered in smoke and broken steel. The colony gates stood unbroken, the people still standing. Marcus raised his weapon high, his voice carrying across the field. "This is humanity," he shouted. "We do not bow to thieves, we do not kneel to traitors, we fight, and we endure." The people answered with a roar, their victory etched into the walls, their unity sealed with blood. When the battle was over, Marcus stood on the balcony once more. The colony cheered below, children lifted by their parents, workers crying in relief. But in Marcus's chest, there was no joy, only the weight of what had been lost. He had protected his people, yes, but at the cost of innocence. The colony no longer looked at him with simple trust, they looked with awe, with fear, with the memory of fire. The alien girl approached, her glow soft in the dusk. "You won," she whispered. "But do you see what you have become?" Marcus did not answer at first, his eyes fixed on the horizon. Finally, he spoke, his voice low. "I became what they forced me to be. I became what humanity needed." The girl studied him, her gaze deep. "Then remember this," she said softly. "Fire protects, but fire also consumes. And one day, you must decide whether you will be remembered as the man who saved his people or the man who ruled them through fear." Marcus looked down at the colony, their voices echoing his name. In their eyes, he was a savior. In their hearts, perhaps something darker. But whatever they believed, One truth was clear. He had secured their future. His ruthless judgment had saved them from collapse.